Hey everyone, welcome to my channel Code Avengers. In today's video, we are going to understand the API rate limiter. So, couple of things that we would be learning in this video about API rate limiter. What is it? Why we need the API rate limiter? So we would understand the system design first, and the next step would be then we would create a Node.js and Express.js APIs app, and we will implement the rate limit middleware using the rate limiter flexible in Node module, right? So let's get started. So let's first understand what is an API rate limiter, right? So all right. So let's say APIs, how APIs work, and why we need the rate limiter, right? So to understand that, let's say we have a Node.js server, API server, we can say. So this is, let's say, Node.js API server. Okay, and let's say we have some users making the requests to this API. Say this. Let's say this is one user, user one, and this is, let's say, user 2. Alright, so when user 1 makes a request to the API, so this is something like this. Okay, and how it works: when user 1 makes an API call, API request, this Node.js server, API server listens to it and responds back with the response. Okay, and similarly user 2 would make the request to the Node.js API server, and server would respond back with the API's response, right? So, and this Node.js server, as you know, cannot have unlimited resources, unlimited bandwidth to serve the request. There's always the resource limitations, and whatever you need to pay the bill for your usage of your resources on the server, right? In terms of CPU processing, memory, and network, right, and a lot of other things. So let's say, what if this user 1 makes multiple calls, right? If user 1 makes multiple calls, let's say 2 calls in a second, right? So your Node.js server would be serving the response as well to this user 1. Okay, but can you imagine what if this user 1 is a greedy user, right? Greedy client, and is making 100 calls per second, right? In a second, 100 calls, maybe more than 100, even 1000 calls per second. And let's say your Node.js server's maximum capacity is, let's say the capacity of this Node.js server is, just let's take some number, okay, 100 requests per second. For example, I'm just taking this as an example, right? The capacity could be anything, could be 1000 requests per second, 10,000, something like that. Okay, so if this user 1 himself is making 100 calls, 100 requests per second to your server, API server, so what would happen? Your API server would be busy, serving the request to user 1, right? And at the same time, user 2 is making some calls, maybe even 1 call or 2 calls again, or 100 calls, right? So what would happen? There would be a server crash. At certain point of time, your Node.js API server wouldn't be able to handle all the requests because it reaches to its maximum capacity, right? But what you would like to do, you would like that all the users should be served with all the requests, but genuine and valid requests, right? So misuse of, now here you can easily see like user 1 is misusing your resources. Okay, so how you can stop the users, your clients, to misuse your APIs resources or APIs. So for that purpose, there is a technique by which you can limit the number of requests per user, or per IP addresses, per API keys. The logic is yours. You can have your own logic. But what if I make, if I place a rate limiter here? Okay, so whenever a client makes a request here, right? So this rate limiter would check how many requests already this user has made in a second or a period of time. Let's say, for example, we are taking 1 second right now, but you can have 1 minute in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, or even 1 day, right? So you can have limiters based on any time period. So for our example, we are just talking about in seconds. Okay, so per second, this user makes first call and then makes the second call, and we have put 1 call per second, for example, right? So what would happen? This rate limiter have the info that how many request this user one has already placed in a second, right? And what is the maximum request allowed? So maximum request allowed for this user is 1 request per second. So what would happen? Either you have 2 options. Either you can immediately reject this request and this request will be rejected, and rejected response will be served to the user one, right, with a status like too many requests. There is a 429 status code for this purpose. Or you can also put some delay here, right? This request can be delayed and will be served later when in the next second, right, when this period is over. I mean, this is up to you what logic or what strategy you would like to implement, right? So for us, we would be just rejecting it. Alright, so this request will be rejected back. Okay, now, so this is how we, this is why the rate limiters are needed to stop misuse of your resources. Okay, and not only misuse, there are certain things like if you have the number of users, sometimes genuine number of users may increase, right, at certain point of time. Huge traffic may come. I mean, not only one user is making calls, right? It may be possible that right now you have 2 users. It may be 10,000 users, right, making calls to your system, okay, to your server. So in that case also, if 10,000 your total 100 requests per second is the capacity of your Node.js server, right? In that case, if you have 1,000 users or 10,000 users per second, concurrent users, right? So in that case, how would you handle? I mean, right, your servers would be crashed. In that case also, you can put rate limiter here that only this number of requests would be served, should be reached to your API server, right? And rest of them can be delayed or can be rejected straight away. Alright. Okay. So the next step is to implement the rate limiter. Okay, so this is the rate limiter. So we have to implement, and you see, so rate limiter would act as a middleware in between the request and serving the response, right? So before serving the response, somewhere the rate limiter should be there, right? So I mean, only the allowed request should be should reach to the server, and rest of them should be rejected, right? So we would be implementing this rate limiter part, the middleware part. Okay, so let's do it. For that purpose, the first thing is to create a Node.js and Express.js APIs app that would be serving the APIs, and then we will implement the rate limit middleware there. Okay, so let's create, for that purpose, let's open the new terminal. Here, let's create a project folder first, and we name it, let's say blogs API. Okay, and we would initialize this with npm init. I have extracted all the default values here. So this would have created a package.json. See, we have a package.json. Now the next step is to install the dependencies. So what dependencies we would need? npm r, let's save them. First is Express. Okay, and the next is basically we need the Express for API, but for rate limiter we need the rate limiter flexible. I mean, there are other node modules available as well for the rate limiting, or you can create your own rate limiter kind of library. Okay, so we need this. Let's do it. Okay, installed. At the same time, we would need some of the tab dependencies as well. So like we need, if we are creating a TypeScript, we are supporting the TypeScript in our Node.js application, then we need a node, PS node, and we would need the types for Node and Express. So types Node, as well as we would need types for Express.js. Okay, and what else? We would need the node.mon as well. Node.mon is a node module that allows you to making you the code changes, and it would be updated when you're running node instance live. Otherwise you need to run Node.js again and again after changing. If you have any change in the code, you need to run it again manually. Okay, so this would help in that. Okay, alright, let's install it. Okay, it's done. Let's check the package.json. So we have all the Node dev dependencies as well as the Express and limited flexible as the Express dependencies for this project. Now what we need the here we have the index. So basically now we have one more thing we need as a dev dependency, and that's because we would like to support the TypeScript. So TS Node is okay. We need the npm TypeScript as well, right? We missed that. So let's install it. Okay, cool. Now what we need? Let's define the entry point. So entry point would be server.ts. Okay, TypeScript files because we are supporting TypeScript as well. And let's create some scripts to run our so nodemon and server.ts. Okay, and another dependency for, let's say, ts node server.ts. Okay, now let's create a server.ts file, and let's start the let's import the Express from Express and create an instance of Express. So const app would be new Express. Oh, okay, not new Express. So now we have the instance, and let's start listening to our server. Oh. Process.env.port. Let's get the port number from the process environment. If it is not available, then we can set it to 3000, for example. Alright. So here we can say like console.log. We have started APIs. Server is running at HTTP localhost and code. Okay, so what is next? Next is now we need to define some of the routes, like root route or other routes to serve. So we can use app dot use basically we are not going to create a router right now here. Okay, just sake of simplicity, let's create some of the route itself here, like API. Okay, and request response next. So response dot send hey I'm working at route / API. Okay, and because we are using TypeScript, so we can from the Express similarly have response from the Express, and we have the next function as well. Next function. Okay, cool. And similarly, let's have another route, blocks. Okay, and here we would be sending JSON, and let's have some JSON here, sample JSON. Let's some ID 1 2 3 4, and let's say title block title 1, for example, and let's another block, and this is block title 2. Okay, so what we have done here is, up to now this would serve when we start the server. There are two routes. One is the root route for API that should send this text, and another is API blocks should be serving the JSON as an array of 2 blocks. Okay, and let's check it. So npm run that. Okay, so unknown file extension.ts. Alright, there is one thing that is missing. We have not initialized TypeScript. Okay, so let's initialize that. For that, npx tsc init. So this has created this tsconfig file here, and here you can set some properties in the tsconfig file. What we need is, we don't need much right now. If you want to build it, so we may need output folder, right? Similarly, we can define the excludes, imports, includes and excludes what folders we want to include in TypeScript, right? So okay, now let's run it again. Okay, alright, so our server has been started at 3000 port. So let's test it in Postman. Okay, so we have this API, localhost 3000/API. Let's see. Hey, I am working at route/API, so this is what is expected. Let's do one thing, create another tab, and here we would be serving blocks. Okay, and see, we are getting the JSON in response. Okay, so right now you see, if I make quickly multiple calls, right? So there's no rate limit, right? And it's getting subbed. Okay, so, or even I can automate multiple requests if I want to intentionally, if someone wants to intentionally, just shut down or crash our server, he can automate multiple requests in a for loop, something like that. Okay, so to stop that, we need the rate limiter now. Okay, so we would be now implementing the rate limiter middleware. Okay, cool. So as you see, we have a big package here, rate limiter flexible, and so let's create one folder here, middleware, and let's create a file here, rate limit.ts, and we need to import rate limit. So rate limiter flexible allows you to create rate limiter in memory rate limiter, as well as MySQL, Mongo, Dynamo, right, and several other. And so what we need right now, what we will be doing is, we will be using the rate limiter memory. So this would be working from memory, in process memory, right? Okay, so we now what we need. So let's create the middleware here. Okay, so return const rate limit. So basically, this should be export const rate limit, and so middleware usually works in between the response, sending the response, and receiving the request, right? So it means it should have something like this, and the structure, the definition should be like request, response, and the next. Okay, so what we need is, we need to create the instance of rate limit memory here. Okay, so const rate limiter equal, so new rate limiter memory, and some of the options we need to pass here. So there are a couple of options, but the basic options are, we need to it works in using the points, okay, and also the duration. I'll explain what are these two. Okay, so basically points is something equivalent to number of requests, or you can assign points per request as well, right? If let's say point per request is 1, then one request would be equivalent to 1 point, and if one request is equivalent to 2 points, so basically 2 points will be consumed while serving one request. Okay, so accordingly you need to set the number of points per duration. So for example, if I would like to allow 5 requests per 60 seconds, per minute, okay, then we need to set the 5 points here and 60 seconds here. This duration is in seconds. Okay, so this rate limiter would limit the request as per this rule. 5 points after 5 requests in a second, all rest of the requests would be rejected. Okay, So this is the rate limiter here. Now what we need to do is rate limiter dot consume, and here we need to provide the key. So usually this is the IP address or maybe your API keys or something like that, something from the request. Okay, so that is something that you can define here. Okay, cool. So we can say request.ip, and then points to consume. So this is where you need to specify for request how many points will be consumed. I mean, you can quantify or request in terms of points. So for us right now, I'm just taking 1 point consumed per request, and then there are a couple of options, you can leave them for now. Okay, what is this? Type string a number. Okay. Okay, cool. So rate length this is, and then because it returns a promise, and in promise it returns a response, rate limiter response, right? If it is successful, if it allows. Okay, and this is something rate limiter response type. Rate limit okay, and what we'll do, and also we'll catch it. So catch will give you some error. I mean, it's basically promise rejection. Okay, so or you can say rejection, and here you can send the response, basically response.send 429 is the response code that usually we use to send, and you can send some error message, too many requests or something like that. Okay, and here if you would like to do something, then it's okay. Otherwise you simply if it is successful, then you need to just call the next function. Okay, there is one mistake. Next. Okay, so this is how. And if you would like to set some of the headers here, okay, so you can set the response.headers. Okay, let's say retry after or something like that. I mean, you can do anything here because you can set the headers specifically for this rate limiting, and the results you can have the values from here, this response, like remaining points, right? Something like that. Retry after, you can calculate using this duration. Okay, before next, right? Is this the okay? Similarly, you can or do your own stuff you would like to do here, and that's it. Okay, so when you apply this middleware, we can name it like middleware as. Okay, so right now these are constant values I have supplied here. You can allow user to enter from the from where you are consuming this middleware. So it's a number, and then you can have duration, and this is also a number. Okay, there's one more thing that you would need. Right now you see request.ip is the default, right? Wherever you apply, it will be applied based on the IP address. If you would like to set it using other ways, like maybe API keys or some route or some other unique keys, right? So then in that case you can have a key here as well. You can allow user to pass from there. For now, just let's keep it as is. Okay, so what we can do is we can pass these, remove these constants, and have these values from the arguments. Alright, so now the next step is let's consume it. So to consume it, we have to consume it here. So app.use. So before serving the responses, so basically before going to the route handlers, we need to use the app.use here, and we need to pass the middleware, and our middleware name is rate limit middleware, and here is we need to import it from here, and then we have to pass it similar way, in this way. So what we need to pass, we need to tell this middleware how many points to allow and a window frame, I mean in what duration. Okay, so we would like to allow only 5 calls in, let's say, 60 seconds. Okay. So that's it. And now let's use Postman. So this should be our first call. This is okay, and let's see the headers as well. Not these headers, these are request headers, these headers. So retry after 60,000 milliseconds. Next call, retry after this, and in body we are getting the response here. You can see again retry after this much milliseconds. This, and now 5 requests have been done. So 4 to 9, too many requests. Now we are getting this as the response, too many requests. Okay, and the status code is 4 to 9. And in the headers, if you see, now there are no headers. Here you can, in the 4 to 9, too many requests also, if you want, you can tell the user, tell the consumer that you can retry after this many seconds or this many milliseconds. You can set the header there as well, right? 160 seconds will expire. Okay, now it started serving the request again. See, and if you reach again, so this is how rate limiter should work. Okay, and in the rate limiter, you see, we have set the header here. In the similar way, you can set the header by responding with the error. Okay, and other headers as well you can set. It's up to you what headers you would like to set. Okay, so this is how these things are working. Okay, so basically, so I think we have done all the steps. We have completed all the steps. So now our API is working fine, and also it is rate limiting. And you can play with it. You can set different values here and see what is working. If you would like to set it for per second, okay, then you can set it here 1 second. And if you would like to allow only 2 calls, for example, per second, set it here. Okay, and if you would like to check it, so in a second, see, in per second only 2 calls are there. Okay, so because time frame is very low, that is 1 second, and I'm not able to here make 3 calls in a second, right? So it is working properly. The user is not getting 4 to 9 status code, calls are not getting rejected. Okay, and similarly, if I make it like 5 seconds, maximum 2 calls, 2 requests would be allowed in 5 seconds. Okay, now let's check. So this time what we have set, 2 calls per 5 seconds. So maybe I will be able to make multiple calls in 5 seconds, more than 2 calls. Yes, so it started giving you too many requests, 4 to 9 status code, rejection error. Okay, so this is how a rate limiter is implemented using in Node.js and Express.js APIs. Okay, hope you like the video. Thanks for watching. Do like, comment, subscribe my channel, and write in the comments what else topics you would like me to cover in my coming videos. I will try to make videos on those topics as well. Thank you so much. Thanks. Have a nice time.